Malaria has been one of the deadliest diseases in human history, responsible for millions of deaths worldwide, and continuing to claim hundreds of thousands of lives every year, predominantly children under 5 in sub-Saharan Africa. In the early 2000s, global campaigns like the Rollback Malaria Partnership, the Global Fund, and the Gates Foundation rallied behind a simple but powerful intervention: insecticide-treated mosquito nets. And the evidence was compelling. Early trials showed that these nets reduced child mortality by as much as 20%. Economists even hailed them as one of the most cost-effective solutions in global health. Jeffrey Sachs, who we've talked about before, even called bed nets the best buy in public health. For a time, these nets became a symbol of everything good about global development. It was a cheap, scalable fix with a measurable impact. $5 could save a life. What could be more compelling? But development is never as simple as one brilliant fix. So, where do mosquito nets fall short? First, misuse and repurposing. In many villages, people used mosquito nets not for sleeping, but for fishing. After all, the material is cheap, durable, and readily available. Some families used their nets to cover their crops. Others just didn't sleep under nets at all. These nets can trap heat, right? So imagine sleeping under one in an already hot climate. It could be completely unbearable. A fisherman near Lake Victoria put it rather bluntly, but I think quite well. He said, "Why would I sleep under a net when I can feed my family with it?" Second is distribution and logistical failures. Massive donations of nets often created bottlenecks. Shipments piled up in customs warehouses. Some regions were flooded with nets, while nearby villages had none. Worse, distribution relied heavily on donations, which meant that when funding cycles ended, so did the supply. Entire communities went from having nets everywhere to suddenly having none. Third, resistance and evolving mosquitoes. Over time, mosquitoes developed a resistance to the insecticides used in these nets. By the 2010s, the World Health Organization was reporting widespread resistance. Yet donations of the same nets continued, even as their effectiveness waned. Finally, symbolism was valued over systems. Mosquito nets became an easy political story, a neat, media-friendly pitch that $5 saves a life. But the systemic investments needed, like stronger health networks, more trained community health workers, and more robust infrastructure, lagged behind. Nets were a quick headline, but they couldn't substitute for the slow, less glamorous work of system building. It's not that nets don't work, it's that they don't work in isolation. The data tells a more nuanced story. According to the WHO's World Malaria Reports, mosquito nets contributed significantly to the decline in malaria deaths between 2000 and 2015. During that period, malaria deaths dropped by more than 50% in some regions. But after 2015, progress began to stall. Death rates plateaued and even rose again in some regions. Studies in sub-Saharan Africa showed that nets alone were no longer enough. Combination strategies, so nets plus indoor spraying, and better diagnostics, and community health access, and access to treatment, became essential. Economist Angus Deaton, in his book The Great Escape, cautioned against placing too much faith in what he called silver bullet solutions. A net, like any other tool, is only as strong as the system that delivers and sustains it. Fieldworkers saw this reality up close. Some saw families hanging up nets, but not using them properly. In some places, nets were tied up on the ceiling or shoved away in closets because they were uncomfortable and people didn't like using them. Organizations like Partners in Health have long argued that commodities alone don't solve problems. What matters is the human element: training, trust, follow-up, and accountability. A net handed out as a product is one thing, but a net given as part of a relationship with a community health worker is another entirely. This ties into the work of another one of my favorite economists, Amartya Sen, who argues that development is not just about the distribution of goods, but about expanding freedoms. Giving someone a net that could save their life is not the same as giving them the freedom to live a healthier life. That requires dignity and choice, and the trust to act on new information. Mosquito nets reveal a deeper tension in global health between charity logic and systemic change. Charity logic essentially says, give the net, save a life, and move on to the next project. Systemic change, on the other hand, says build resilient health systems, even if it takes decades. In my line of work, a mosquito net would be sort of analogous to a safety feature in a device. It's important, but it's useless if the underlying system is flawed. Public health requires integration. It's nets, plus spraying, plus testing, plus health systems, plus political stability, plus economic stability. All of these together must be integrated, otherwise the system cannot hold. Of course, anytime I bring up partners in health, I have to bring up Paul Farmer. The idea that some lives matter less is the root of all that is wrong with the world. If we stop at nets, we risk sending the message that quick fixes are good enough for the poor, even though we would never accept the same solutions for ourselves. So to the rebuttal of, but haven't mosquito nets already saved millions? Isn't that enough? Yes, mosquito nets have saved millions. They worked brilliantly in the early years. But if we rely on them too heavily, we risk distraction. Cost effectiveness can blind us to sustainability. These nets were never meant to be the whole solution, but they became treated as one. So, are mosquito nets a waste of money? Not exactly. They have saved lives, millions of them. But when used as a standalone solution, they risk becoming a band-aid that distracts us from the deeper systemic fixes. The real lesson is this. Effective aid isn't about distributing commodities. It's about designing resilient systems. Systems that adapt to resistance and respect cultural realities, and that empower communities to make choices for themselves. And as for how we can prevent these band-aid solutions, I have 3 main ideas, but feel free to disagree or to add more if you have others. Number 1, if you are going to donate money, especially after the defunding of USAID, I would highly encourage you to research your charities and choose one that funds integrated malaria control, not just one-off net campaigns. Number 2 is to shift your mindset from thinking about one-off consumer-bought solutions to larger-scale systems-building solutions. And number 3 is just to become more fluent in these ideas yourself. So read the World Health Organization's World Malaria Reports. Read The End of Poverty by Jeffrey Sachs. Read The Great Escape by Angus Deaton. Become familiar with these texts. So in conclusion, when it comes to saving lives, we want there to be silver bullets. We want there to be simple solutions. But the world of public health is rarely simple. But maybe that's the point. Global health isn't about a net. It's about weaving a system that is strong enough to hold us all. Thanks for watching.